you and I have talked about Nick Fuentes many times over the years in our many appearances together, and that's how I knew about him, because he was saying absolutely terrible things about you. And I am going to show a video, please forgive me, of one of my first introductions to this guy, Nick Fuentes, and what he was saying about Ben. This is a video of him showing himself playing Grand Theft Auto, right, a video game where you shoot people, and he's pretending that this character in the video is Ben.
I would hate for people to believe that the Nick Fuentes sort of, my problems with Nick Fuentes are about me, because they really are not. They are about the fact that Nick Fuentes is a truly horrifying person who believes truly horrifying things. And again, there is a reason why Charlie Kirk despised him. There is a reason why every mainstream political commentator has been highly critical of him. It's the reason why. These are not arguments. This is not a person who's making arguments. He is a Hitler-loving troll, and I say that advisedly. He literally says on his show that he loves Adolf Hitler. Okay, so the reason this has come up in recent weeks is because Tucker, your guest last night, decided to have him on last week and to completely gloss him, in my opinion. And you can make up your own opinion as to what you think Tucker was doing during that interview, but I know what it looks like when Tucker Carlson decides to be an aggressive interviewer, when he decides to ask difficult questions of people. Tucker is eminently capable of doing that, and he did it to Ted Cruz quite thoroughly. But he decided, for any number of reasons, and I try not to attribute motivations to people, that he was going to treat Fuentes with kid gloves, that he was going to not ask him about any of the things that I've just mentioned, literally any of them, and to essentially normalize Fuentes, act as a sort of gateway drug, or as what I've called Tucker, as an ideological launderer of bad ideas over the last couple of years. And this is not coming from a place of animus for Tucker on a personal level. I've known Tucker for a very long time. Tucker and I, whenever we're in personal situations, we get along great. I think I saw that Tucker talked about how we were at Charlie's memorial in the vice president's box together, and he's correct. I mean, we saw each other, we said hello, we talked, it was very friendly, and all of that. And it's also true that a couple of days after Charlie's murder, he reached out and he called me and he said, listen, I know that we're at odds, and we've been at odds for a number of reasons, mainly political. I mean, again, on a personal level, I'd go fishing with Tucker anytime. The real question is, for me, I got into this business because I care about the ideas and I care about the ideals. And so when you're determining what is conservatism, what should the future of America look like, and where do you draw the lines, those are the questions that I need to answer in my job. For me, my business is really not about friendship. I have lots of friends, people who I love, with whom I disagree on politics and don't believe they should be leaders in the conservative movement, for example. And that, to me, is the real question. In any case, Tucker reached out. He said, we've had a bunch of disagreements, and what if we could put those aside and align toward the DSA in particular, is what he mentioned. And I said, Tucker, you're totally right. Let's do that. That would be great. In fact,
the TSA?
The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of
Why
America.
the TSA? How did that bring you together?
The Democratic Socialists of America. And the reason
I know.
Yes, and the reason that I'm taking out
TSA
my
only
phone
divides people.
is because, yes, the reason I'm taking out my phone is because I don't just, I like to evidence what I'm saying with, actual evidence. So I texted him. And the text exchange was very nice. I mean, here's what the actual text exchange went like after the call. So I texted him and I said, thanks so much for calling. It means the world. It truly does. Should we do a show together talking about the DSA threat, Democratic Socialists of America threat, and orienting in the same direction? Happy to do whatever it takes to bring everyone back together for the fight that matters. And Tucker then wrote back, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm going to spend the next week or two thinking about how to be most effective. The country is clearly on the brink. I reached out repeatedly after that. Nothing happened. And again, I thought it was a good idea at the time. I think I felt differently after I saw what he did with Nick Fuentes, and after he proceeded, in my opinion, to spend the subsequent weeks doing literally nothing to fight the left. I say this with sadness because Tucker used to be, I think, a deeply important part of the conservative push to win. The number of times that Tucker Carlson has mentioned Zoran Mamdani since October 5th on his show is once. And it was in the context of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson talking about the appeal of Zoran Mamdani. Just by way of contrast, not because I'm a perfect representative here, but because you've talked about Zoran Mamdani a lot. A lot of us have. Since October 5th, I did 17 separate shows on Zoran Mamdani, including 4 in the last week before the election. Okay, because when you're orienting against the left, you really should orient against the left.
Okay, so a lot in there. I think, just to be clear, so the breakdown from the detente after Charlie was him interviewing Fuentes? Was that the next thing that happened that led to the blow up?
I mean, yes. I mean, I had not spoken a word. There
so it
were
wasn't
things
that he attacked you, or you had
no,
something?
I don't care about people attacking me, and I don't think Tucker cares about people attacking him. I mean, again, we're professionals. We're in a business where people comment on what we say publicly. Again, this is why I think you and I differ on our angle with regard to, for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what?
Because
I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in that content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch Candace's show.
I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that that friendship should not, in our business, I think it's important. Listen, friendship should not trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
Okay, so I don't totally disagree, but I think the way of handling that, at least for me, is much different. So I saw things go south between you and Tucker, at least from my vantage point, when you disagreed on Israel. That was obvious. And he was, let me just make my point.
Sure.
And so he was saying things that were critical of Israel and our policy towards Israel. And then you did one show where you did what I thought you should have done if you disagreed with him, which clearly you did, which is say what you believe and what you think is factual and educate your audience on what you think are the real facts and give them the evidence for it. But you named him and it felt like an attack. And that, to me, was the beginning of the end, where he was like, now it's on. Because he felt personally attacked by you, as opposed to just challenging his idea. I think you named him and you kind of diminished him. And, he's an 800-pound gorilla, and if you mess with a gorilla, he's going to fight. And to me, that's where it started to go south. And because I remember that day being like, oh, shit. Well, I don't want to see this.
But here's the thing. I would urge everybody to go back and listen to the show that you're referring to, where I criticized Tucker's ideas, not Tucker as a person. Tucker then responded by claiming that I do not love America. That is a direct quote. That I do not love America because I was spending too much time covering the October 7th attacks, and then proceeded in January to then say that I wanted his children to die in a foreign war. Okay, so those are different.
That's a rhetorical
no, it is
point.
not. I'm sorry, it's not. An attack on motivation is a very different thing from an attack on an idea.
His point was that you were sounding like a neocon, and he's upset with anybody who wants us to get too involved in Israel's conflict because he feels it endangers American children.
Okay, the idea that, number one, the idea that I want the United States to be directly involved in Israel's conflict is not true.
No, I know that, Ben.
I've been urging Israel to get off of American aid for literally as long as I have been active in politics.
But I'm making clear what his point was.
But my point is that that's not his point. And again, none of this.
So we disagree.
We disagree on the interpretation of what Tucker has been doing for the past 2 years, and it's very difficult for me to believe that Tucker is merely anti-Israel when, for example, today in his newsletter, I mean, I can directly quote it if you'd like. In his newsletter today, he claimed that Zoran Mamdani is not anti-Semitic. This was his newsletter today, this morning. I mean, I'm happy to read the text. It's a little extraordinary because, again, it is kind of shocking stuff. So here's what Tucker Carlson wrote in his newsletter today, or what his newsletter says under his name. He said, "Is the incoming mayor a fan of Israel? Does he want America to fight its wars? Not particularly. But a Jew hater? That's a different conversation. We've never seen anything to suggest he falls into that ugly camp. If we're talking about fighting the left, defending Zoran Mamdani, who literally said that he has no opinion whether Hamas should disarm, who posed alongside the 1993 World Trade Center unindicted co-conspirator, who would not disown globalize the Intifada, who suggested that whenever there is a New York Police Department boot on somebody's neck, it's an IDF lacing the strings, to suggest that that's not anti-Semitic in any way? No way.
Okay, but listen.
Or I'm
going to give you a defense of Tucker here, and I don't need to defend Tucker because I'm not Tucker.
Tucker can perfectly well defend himself.
I think in general, because I know him and I listen to him and I understand generally where he's coming from. he would say his problems are with Israel, and he would say that shot that Mamdani laid against the IDF is a shot against the IDF and Israel, and how he thinks they're pro-war, not against Jews.
Okay.
And I think
all I can say is when Tucker Carlson finds himself in complete alignment with Zoran Mamdani, it is very difficult for me to believe that he does not agree with Zoran Mamdani.
Is in a place. Nick Fuentes has said a long list of very vile things.
Big time, including attacking my dad, which was the most vile of all, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I personally have watched videos of him questioning the Holocaust, likening it to baking cookies in the oven, and there's no way you could have gotten to 6 million, seems to be his theory. He seems to think that we've way overstated the number of Jews killed in the Holocaust. He's ripped on poor Usha Vance in the most offensive terms, which I mean, so what do you say to those people who say, why didn't you raise any of that?
Do your own interview the way that you want to do it. You're not my editor. Buzz off. I mean, I don't know. You want to go yell at Nick Fuentes? I'll give you his cell. Call him and go sit and yell at him and feel virtuous or whatever. That's up to you. I got the same thing with Putin. Why aren't you yelling at him? Okay, why? So I can show that I'm a good person? I care about what my wife thinks, my children think, and God thinks, and that's it. I don't need to prove that I'm a good person to you. You may think I'm a terrible person. Okay, I'm just doing my thing, which is I want to understand what people think, and I'm committed to that. And if you don't like it, don't watch. That's
all right. So this is what they do, folks. You see how he nobody's asking you to yell at Nick Fuentes. No one is asking you to yell at him, but we would like to have you ask him questions like you did with Ted Cruz. Like you've done with other people who we already know you have a disagreement with. The man was on crossfire for years. This was his job, where he asked people tough questions. He brought supporting information and he asked them these questions. He didn't do any of that. Nobody's saying he shouldn't have interviewed Nick Fuentes, but ask him these questions if you're going to have someone on your podcast that's so vile. Michelle, what did you think about what he just said?
I mean, let's be clear. He does care about what people are saying. He does. And I think part of the fact that he didn't push back is because he knows exactly who Fuentes is, the things that he says, and how much Tucker Carlson, would get attention because of pushback even. He does care. He knows what the ratings are. That's when he left, when he left Fox, he knew that he could pack up, and he had so many followers that were going to come along with him that it didn't matter. And he's right. He can do what he wants. Anybody on the left or right can do what you want. You can say what you want. I'm not going to shut anybody down, but I have the right not to listen to you. And the problem comes down to the fact that we have put certain people on a pedestal. We have looked to them for moral clarity because they were the loudest voices and the only ones with platforms large enough to say what we wanted to hear, which a lot of times was just, flat out, we love America, we love God. They were saying things that were on the right, and millions of followers started listening. And the reason why here in Christian Conservative, we talk about them, not because we like them, not because we necessarily want to, but with millions of followers and people looking to them more than they look to Christ, who is pushing back to say, no, 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 these are just people. Do not follow after man, because man will lie, but follow after God. Somebody has to do the pushback, because unfortunately, people do look at Candace as if she is a pastor or preacher. They will listen to her 10 times more than they will listen to a pastor. They might not even go to church. But what she says, they think, oh, that must be right. And especially where she's at with Catholicism. What Tucker says or who he platforms, people think, oh, there must be merit. There must be something good about this person. And so what is it? And that's where I take issue. Not about who he interviewed. He's right. Anybody can say what they want. But we gave so much stock to these guys because what they did in the past was push back. Now they're beyond softball. Now they're just laying back and they're just letting things happen and letting people on that are just vile, evil, that promote evil.
But
and
what
then
about
they profess Christianity?
Yeah. But what about Michelle? Because Megyn Kelly came out this week and she went in on people like you and I who have been putting a spotlight on Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and their conspiracy theories and their, pretty much platforming evil people and not really, asking hard, tough questions, making them answer for the things they've said. she came out and said that we're the ones who were behind or helped the Democrats win on Tuesday. So we shouldn't do this to people on our side. We should focus all of our fire on the left instead of calling them out on when we see them pushing untruths. What do you say to that?
Well, at this point, who's to say they're on our side? What we saw is people that have gotten a platform and flipped. They flipped the script. They flipped like a pancake. They're on a whole other side, browning to a different temperature. And I don't have to follow them anymore. And I can see what they are for who they truly are right now, right here and right now. And frankly, this is not about the election, because this is always, for Christian conservative, this is about God. And Christians better get out and vote biblically, period. I don't need Megyn or anybody else to say we need to stop. No, we don't. What we need to do is get people out to actually start voting. We need Christians to get off their behinds and out from behind a pew and actually show up, because what didn't happen is they didn't show up. And let's stop pretending that this election on Tuesday was some big thing, because let me just tell you, these are blue states and blue cities. And we saw it coming out of my own lips. I said, guys, there's a reason the government is shut down. And please don't think it's because it's insurance for illegal aliens or Americans. That's not what it was. So they're playing that political game. That does not stop us from pushing back on wickedness and unrighteousness when it comes from the mouths of those that millions are following. No, I don't buy it. I'm not going to stop. We shouldn't stop. And then we can tackle the other issues when it comes to elections at midterms by showing up and voting and talking about issues like the economy.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you, Michelle. And here is Megyn Kelly again with him. Now, in this exchange, he talks about there was some little remorse he had with the interview with Nick Fuentes, but this is also a bunch of crap. Take a look here. All right, let's see here.
But I will say, just since you brought it up, one thing that did bother me was the Usha Vance thing. And I generally make it a practice not to be like, you said this and da-da-da-da-da, and the internet tells me, or, the ADL says you said this. It's like, why don't you just tell me what you do think? Like, why don't you speak for yourself? Because we're adults. That is my approach with everybody.
Yeah, right.
Whether I like him or don't like him. But the Usha Vance thing did upset me, because I know Usha Vance and I love Usha Vance. And I was really offended by that, just personally, because I know her, right? And in a normal way. And I did think about that. Like, that pissed me off. And I'm just being as honest as I can be. I didn't want to repeat it.
Yeah, no, you're always in that position. As a journalist, you're always there. Like, do I repeat it?
Well, if you know the person
and spread it,
or kind of, and it's like so wounding. And I mean, he attacked my wife, as I said. So I don't know. I'm sensitive on that.
So let me ask you
Maybe I made the wrong call, by the way. But I will say,
I mean, so for people who know, Nick Fuentes also made some racist remarks about Usha Vance, who is JD Vance's wife. I think she comes from India. And he's saying another thing that Nick Fuentes says that he did not ask him about. He did not call him on it. And now he's saying, maybe I should have. I don't know. What are your thoughts there, Michelle?
Yeah, maybe you should have. There we go. Fine. Maybe you should have. No, you should have. But you should have pushed back on a lot of things. And it's interesting because right now he shifted from what he was as a journalist. He doesn't stick by the same standards as journalistic integrity that he used to. It's a podcast. People are listening. It's at this point, it's entertainment, and he can do what he wants to do. But yeah, when you profess somebody as your friend, and that's another thing with Tucker, with Candace, and this person was my friend, or I have so much respect, and then you bring somebody on who trashes them, bashes them, and you say nothing, it makes me question your friendship. What kind of friend are you? Right? With friends like you, I don't need enemies. And yeah, push back again. Or not, because what we've seen with Tucker is he doesn't have a problem with Sharia law.
Right.
He's saying a lot of crazy things that I'm thinking, well, maybe this is who you really are, because you've been joking about things that I take seriously and are really frightening just for us as a nation. So I'm just not surprised. I think it's nonsense at this point, and I think he's going to probably be pulling a lot more characters like this. I'm sure Mondani will be on his show and saying whatever he wants to say, and we'll have it on the podcast. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, no remorse, no reflection, no accountability, just arrogance. Arrogance wrapped in this pseudo intellectual freedom talk. This is what they did. And Megyn Kelly, she just laughs. She just laughs when he makes the excuse, oh, I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to, say that again, as far as what he said about Usher Vance. Then why have him on? This guy has said all kinds of horrible things. Most of the things that he puts out are horrible. So why have him on if you felt like they were so horrible? The things that he has said are so horrible that you didn't want to repeat them on your program. It just didn't make sense. And Megyn Kelly didn't even call him on it. She just laughs. So, I mean, my question for you, Michelle, I mean, they're doing this on purpose. No, they're purposely doing these things, right? Trying to push these people out in the forefront, not ask them any hard questions. He's been sort of making, talking, as you mentioned, Sharia law and talking about Islam and bad-mouthing Israel and the Jews and all. He's trying to push an agenda. At this point, it's not just him interviewing people, it's deliberate. Is that right?
I think it's deliberate. This is about ratings, ladies and gentlemen. This is keeping the people following you. This is keeping you rolling in the money. This is keeping you in the upper echelon of politicians and notable figures that you get to stay in those circles. This is ratings. They're not taking this seriously. So before they got to this point, right, there was something they were passionate about. They wanted to make it. They maybe were saying things, and we see a lot of people, when they say bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you're really in it for the journalism. You're really in it for X, Y, and Z. And we see this with young artists. And then all of a sudden they get to that certain level with, why are they in this now? And I'm going to question, why is he in this now? And I will say, hands down, from what I've seen in the last several interviews, it's not about God. Because if it was about God, you would push back. And we know this because if you are led by the Spirit, you feel it. Even in an interview with somebody, when something's wrong. When those bells go off internally, and you're like, no, this is not right. But he's not being led by that. And if he is, he's suppressing it masterfully. But you're right. I think it's because it's intentional. And these are people in that top 1%, 2%. Those are those inner circles. And I question what else has infiltrated. Now, we've talked about this again, not to keep bringing up Candace, it could be any podcaster, but who are they listening to? And if it's not God, then who? If it's a circle of people around them, are they of godly influence or not? Because it doesn't seem that way. And it's not about right and left. It's not about Republican, Democrat. It is about godliness, righteousness, and evil. And wrong. That's what this is. So I'm going to keep calling it out. You keep calling out bad apples. You keep correcting. If we didn't keep correcting that, then why would any of us go to church? Let me just put that there. Because I know a lot of people, even in the chat, are like, well, why? Why would you? They can do this. They can do the yeah. But the difference between people on the left, far left, leaning Democrats, irrational socialists, why? They don't call out they're bad. They keep it in the family. They hide their secrets. They keep pushing forward. No, if you are on the right and I'm not saying if you are Republican, I'm saying if you are in for righteousness and what is right, you call out things that are wrong. Right. Even if it means you lose a battle, you still call out what is wrong. That is the difference. That's why we read the word. That's why we have a renewing of our minds. That is why we repent of our sins. And we tell people, hey, this isn't the right thing to do. And that's what we're calling out right now. And somebody asked me, what does voting biblically look like?
Oh, right. I saw that. I was going to talk about, go ahead. What do you think it is?
if a candidate running for office is on a platform that abortion should be late term, right? Women should have the rights to do anything with their bodies, and children should be forced and subjected to men in their women's bathrooms. There are things that I say, no, does their policy line up with the word? And I don't care what party they're from, independent, I don't care what you are. But if their policies, if what comes out of their mouths does not line up with the word of God, I am not voting for them. I am voting for the candidate whose policies line up closest to what I read in the Bible. That's it. That's how I vote biblically. And I can't keep supporting somebody who's running on, whose only thing is to run on abortion, whose only thing is to run on socialism or communism, and has nothing to do with gifts that God has given individuals that I know is going to destroy the nation. I can't do it. I won't do it.
Right. I 100% agree. And when we're talking about these biblical issues, just to give some examples, we're talking about family, protecting the family. Before there were kings, governments, or churches, there was the family. The family is the first introduction we get to structure, to actually government, because then your family is sort of like a government or an organization. So protecting the family, and God's design for man and woman, for father and mother, those things. Another thing is it's talking about freedom, because God values freedom of will. That's one thing about Christianity. This is why we're not like the Islamists shouting in the streets, you will become Islam, you will become an Muslim. No, God gave every human being free will, the ability to choose him or reject him. Okay. So many of these things, like you mentioned, are biblical principles. And one of the main ones for me is acknowledging God's authority over government. So our rights don't come from government. They come from God. And so, again, that means we vote, or when we vote, we're not just picking leaders, we're stewarding God's authority on earth. And so this is why, as Christian conservatives, we are so against the Democrat Party, because they believe our rights come from them, from government. My goodness, if any of you guys watched Zoran Mondami's victory speech last night, he literally said it. He said, government is going to, I'm paraphrasing, but he said government is going to do everything for you. Something like that, he said.
Yeah, he said that there is no problem too great that our government can't fix.
Exactly.
What?
All right. Yeah, that was bizarre. That was crazy. Okay, that is not biblical principles, folks. It is not at all. But this is pretty much what the Democrat Party wants us to be and where they want us to be.